Good morning, I'm Anna Brunsden, Community Manager for Hornbill. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar, where we'll be getting an insight into BPM from Victor Szekler, Application Support Specialist. Just to inform you, the delegate audio will be muted during the presentations to help facilitate flow and timekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type into the GoToMeeting facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collate the questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. I'd just like to thank you for your time for attending, and I will now pass you over to Victor.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Victor. I'm part of the application support team here at Hornbill. Thank you for joining today to have an introductory overview of Supportworks Business Process Manager. To start with, we'll have a quick look on what Business Process Manager means as a general idea, and then we'll go through how it actually works in Supportworks. So there are many definitions of a Business Process Manager. I choose two of them. Basically, a business process management is the discipline of managing processes rather than tasks, as the means for improving business performance outcomes and operational agility. Processes span organizational boundaries, linking together people, information flow systems, and other assets to create and deliver value to customers and constituents. I think this definition actually defines how Supportworks views the business process management and in regards to a service management desk. Also, business process management is a systematic approach to making an organization workflow more effective, more efficient, and more capable of adapting to an ever-changing environment. A business process is an activity or set of activities that will accomplish a specific organizational goal. Again, this describes how business process management works in Supportworks. It always follows a workflow or set of processes that include decisions, and it can include many configurable items in there. Right, this is a quick graphical representation of what business process management means. I choose this graphic display because it actually represents how Supportworks views this. We have our external users that connect to the system to a specific interface that can be any of these. We have different other suites and application and other external interface that connects to our BPM suite. And this workflow application service and business model describes exactly how the BPM works as in general and in Supportworks as well. It's the business process manager. It's based on the workflow rules. It follows logic, and it's important to understand how this logic works in order to set up your business process correctly in Supportworks. Without further ado, I will go to Supportworks straightforward. I have a test environment here set up, which I'm using the latest Supportworks platform version 7.6.2 with the ITSM template 360, which is our latest template version in ITSM. So basically, the business process management allows you to define multiple stages of work that different people have to carry out to service a specific request. Each stage in Supportworks is configurable, and the process flow from stage to stage and can be conditional. You can define tasks for each stage, and also you can include authorizations for different stages. The process flow is actively integrated into the request lifecycle. It's even possible to make multiple changes to a specific request, including status and many other properties on the stage itself. You can also extend the functionality to include VPME scripts running. That's a bit more advanced configuration, and the VPME process is covered in a separate topic. The requests that are supported by the business processes are incidents, problem, change requests, and service requests. The business process It's optional for incidents and problems, but it's mandatory for change, release, and service requests. Each request class can or must invoke a default business process, which can invoke sub-processes. As an administrator in Supportworks, you can define the default business process to be invoked and the flow and definition of that process according to obviously your requirements. All request classes using a business process manager will have a supplied default process specific to that class. You can, like I said before, you can set that default process, or you can select to have your own process defined as a default for that class of request. It's important to understand that the business process manager works on logic, and it's for customers that don't have a very technical background regarding IT. It's important to understand that everything in the business process manager goes through logic and follows the specific workflow. I assume most of you or many of you have a business process in place in your organization. You have specific procedures that you follow regarding your service desk. You have possibly workflows that you follow as well. All of this can be mapped in Supportworks following with the help of the business process manager. The processes in Supportworks can be defined graphically or through an interface. The interface that you use to define graphically, you can find it here. I'm not going to go into too much depth into this because personally I prefer to use the regular interface, which is a bit more towards my background. I can see the things a bit better. I do recommend to use this because you can, in this interface, you can see all the options a bit more clearly. To select a process, I think I went a bit too far there. To access the business process manager, you go to File, Manage Settings, then you have the process settings here. The window that opens presents all the types of requests or call classes that can have a business process set to them. So you have change process, release, service, incident management, problem process as well. You can obviously add new processes, you can delete, and you can edit the properties of your processes, and you can, which is something that is not clearly explained, you can copy a business process across. You can also copy specific stages, specific conditions from within a process to a different process, which is something that could be very handy at points when you have similar conditions or triggers across your processes. The process details, you have a process ID that you need to make sure it's set according to the database rules, which is something that is not clearly specified. As a customer support analyst, I often had customers that looked problems regarding to the process definition. Make sure you don't put apostrophe in your definition, because that will break the process itself, because there are certain restrictions on the database that won't allow you to use that apostrophe. It will break some SQL statements. I won't go into much technical details, but as a general idea, it's good not to use the apostrophes in naming your processes. Also, you can specify a description for your process, and further, when we go to stages, there is also an important thing that sometimes is missed. You need to define which is your first stage in your process, otherwise your process won't start. Also, you can have extended data, which is tables and forms, which I'm going to cover in a bit more detail a bit later on. But it's a very nice functionality that's often overlooked. The log request settings, basically this this manages the log call forms. Basically, it's the settings on the BPM level that applies when a new call is logged or a new request is logged. You can enforce specific SLAs on request to override, let's say, a customer-defined SLA or an organization-defined SLA, depending on the business process you choose to. Perhaps you have a certain specific business process that has a different priority or different SLA, which can be enforced here. You can also enforce configuration items of service to be associated with specific requests, especially for service requests, as they are driven by the services themselves. Also, it's something here that is not very used, but it might be intended for many of you, because obviously you have different procedures. Maybe you have log call forms or call form details that might have some information that is going to be mandatory or not mandatory. In the field management section, this is where you can do that. You can specify, let's say, this service request needs to have a mandatory site. The form itself, the out-of-the-box form, doesn't have this field mandatory, but if you specify this here at this level, it will make that field mandatory in the form itself, which is a nice thing to have. The process stages, it's basically the next step in defining the business process. So each business process has a set of stages. If I can find one that is already defined, there you go. A simple one, let's say problem investigation. If you can add as many as you like, and this is the place where, as you can see, sorry about that, as you can see, you also have the copy button here, which you can copy the whole stage, including his definition and this configuration, to a completely different process. Now, it's important to remember in the process stage definition that it follows the sequence. So they will be, the service request or the change request will process through stages following the sequence you define here. You can also, let's say, jump from one stage to the other depending on your settings in the stage itself. But if you don't have any specific conditions here that will trigger this, the business process will follow the stages in the order you define here. The most important part of setting up your business process is the configuration of the stage itself. You can, on a process stage, you can define authorizations and tasks. The authorizations, you can make them mandatory, and you can say this stage requires authorization, and you can start defining your authorizations for this specific stage. I'm sure many processes or stages in a process require this in your organization. You can, the authorization, you can either predefine them, you can add them here, you can have either analysts, customers, or service owners or configuration item owners as authorizers, and you will need to define a weighting, but I will come back to the weighting in a minute. As I said, you can predefine your authorizations here, and they will come up in your request, or another option is to add them on the fly. Let's say you have a team that, let's say a team of managers or team of authorizers that work in organizations, and any of them can authorize, and instead of adding them all here, can be 50, can be 2, can be 100. Instead of adding them all here, you can add them on the fly. I will show a bit later on that how this works on when you log a new request. You can also have different settings for your authorizers, different settings for the authorization stage. You might send email notifications to your customers, your analysts, affected business, and so on, using different templates from different mailboxes. You can also manage the progress of your request based on specific authorization statuses here. Obviously, I will show you that a bit later on how this works on this task steps. Regarding the waiting, as you can see here, this is something that is often overlooked. For example, I will set an authorizer as an analyst quickly here, and I'm giving him a waiting of 25. And if I go back to a request and I authorize an analyst, sometimes users are a bit surprised that the request is not authorized. This is because we're using a so-called waiting system, which works like each authorizer is given a waiting amount or number, and the request itself has authorized or rejected waiting level. So, which this means seems quite simple, but it's believe me, it's very often overlooked. I only have an authorizer on this request, assuming I can't add them on the fly. It has a waiting of 25, but the request itself needs 100 in total in order to authorize or reject. What it means here is that I either need to change the waiting level to match the authorization or rejected waiting level, or I need to add more authorizers that the sum of the waiting for all the authorizers should match one of these values. Also, I can set, for example, this one to 100, and I can add another one, which could be a custom or any other, with the same level of waiting. With this setting, it will mean that when any of these authorizes the request, it will progress forward. It's important to remember the logic here, that whenever this number matches one of these numbers, then the authorization or rejection is triggered. I can also set the authorization to be unanimous authorization, then all of the authorizers will need to authorize or reject the request in order to progress the stage. I can also define tasks on a specific stage. For example, my process can be something along the lines, we need to move our offices, and the first stage is to move the first floor. And one of the tasks, or the task within this stage, could be move chairs, move desks, and so forth. So for this specific stage, I can define as many tasks as I want, and as in authorization setting, I can either predefine them by adding tasks here, or I can add them on the fly. As probably, let's say, I can set move desks, move chairs, but when the request or when the change request is it's in progress, I might realize I need to also move some plastered walls or something like that. So that's really helpful to have. Also, For some specific processes, the task needs to be completed in a specific order, and you need to enforce that the progress to a next stage should not happen unless all tasks are completed, and you can do that by disabling manual stage progression. When that is active, nobody can actually progress the request unless all the tasks are processed. Now we're getting to the a bit more tricky part, which is on start and on status change. Basically, these settings are referring to what happens when the process stage starts or when the process stage status changes. This is where you can do a lot of really nice things with your call, with your request. Let me create quickly one test. Equals one. I'm going to come back to this one equal one in 1 second. And this is where all the, let's say, nice things happen. As you can see, I can set the request to do many things. I can change the status of the request. I can set the condition, which will show it with a different progression color in the help desk view. I can add the request to set to a specific category, to a specific profile, and I can add it to a watch call. It's to be displayed in my watch call list in the help desk view, and obviously I can move it to a different groups analysts, email the action to whenever I can email this specific action to different recipients as well. What's important here is the set process part, which actually based on specific condition, I can move through the process to different stages and set different statuses for that specific stage. This is where I can, let's say, break the process itself. As you remember, I mentioned that if there are no conditions or no specific settings of the business process will follow the stages in the sequence that I define. With these settings here, I can break that rule and move through the stages as I like. For example, I can have a condition: if the task to move the chairs fails, I should not be able to progress further, and I should be back to let's say, a planning stage and go again through the process. So I can really map my workflow, my process workflow with these settings here. It's important to understand the condition, the test condition. Sometimes this is not properly. So let me explain how this works. If you can see here, I put equals 1, which is translates in coding or in programming language as always being true. So if the condition is true, then the standard actions happen. If the condition is not true or the condition is not met, then nothing of this happens. Since this is an on start, so when the stage of the process starts, it's not dangerous. So it's fairly okay to put a condition like that, but not on the status change, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. I usually don't recommend using a static condition like that. Perhaps something like BPM status, let's say I don't have any test values. Bear with me for one quick second to add a status value. Let's say resolved. No, I didn't type right, but it's not. Okay, so if we go here, let's say it's not equal to result. So basically I try to put here something that I know it can't be when the process starts. If I go here, apologies for that, but just lost my voice for a second there. So I'm on change request, something like that. So when my stage starts, you can see here the condition is if the status of the process is not resolved. The status of the process will not have a value until I set it here. So logically, this resolve value will not be in the BPM status ID until I specify it here. So this condition will always be true. So as this is a new call, a new request, the BPM status ID is empty. So it's not equal to resolved. That's the logic behind it. So probably this is common sense for many of you, but it's important to mention the everything in here must follow logic, and it's for somebody like it's not very technical, it might be a bit difficult to understand. So easy thing to do, if this condition is true, then this happens. If this condition is not true, then this will never happen. Okay. Also, besides the let's say standard actions that I can do with a call, I also can perform a diary update. I also can enforce an SLA on specific requests. For service requests, for example, you cannot enforce an SLA as this is driven by a service, so it's something separate. But for change requests, for example, or release requests, you can enforce an SLA based on a specific condition, which will change, again, what we defined in our original stage and process settings. Like I said here, you can define an SLA here, but this can be overwritten in a stage depending on specific conditions. So again, it's very, very configurable. You can do a lot of things with this. In addition to that, you can also run specific VPMs. VPMs are the engine behind the business process manager. Every data that is read from the database, stored in the database, manipulated anyway, it's being done by VPM scripts. We do have licenses for these VPM scripts, so some of you might have access to that functionality to design your own VPM scripts to do a very, very broad range of things. You can also run the out-of-the-box VPM scripts. For example, you can you can set a call owner. You can obviously do that in standard. It's just an example of things that you can do besides the standard actions. The VPM scripts are covered in a different topic, so I'm not going too much detail on this one. A thing you need to remember here, if you ever set the VPM scripts to be run in a process stage, is that you would need to remember that they will be executed in the order that you entered here. Again, the logic comes into play here. So you need to make sure that, or you need to be careful here to put them in the order you want them to be executed here. You have the option always, if the script is flaky or throws an error, you can skip that specific script, and instead of having the business process stuck to a stage, just let it move past that. This option has been here because obviously customers can have customized unit scripts that probably they're testing, or they're not functioning as they expect them to do. So you have options to skip them if they fail. Right. So on start, on a process stage, it's quite fairly simple. Obviously, going quickly back here, just if you like, you can use this. Sorry about that. Let me remove this. You can use this. It's fine as well. It will work, just not a personal preference. On status change, this is where things get a bit more interesting. When you define the process stages, you can also define various status for that for that specific stage. I'm going to add quickly a new one, just to have a reference. So, for example, going back to the request example I mentioned before, moving the office, the stage is moving first floor, and you can set it as in progress, for example, which is in progress, or resolved, which will expect the process to move to the next stage once the previous stage is completed. So this can be done on this level. I'm going to create a new condition. Let's say done. And here I'm going to say if the business process status is resolved, then I can again do all the settings I want, or possibly put the request on hold. For example, if the next stage in my request is, let's say, wait for moving company to come in, then it's not in my hands anymore, and I would probably put the request on hold. Just a quick example. And obviously, I can move the workflow to the next stage. Now, if going back to the conditions, I can also put this, let's say, progress, and say if my call is on progress, so it's not yet resolved, then the standard action could be different. For example, I would need to say, send an email to a customer saying the removal stage is in progress, and so forth and so forth. I can perform a specific diary update, which will inform the analyst and the customer of the call progress, and anything else you like to set up at this level. Probably change the category, change the condition, and so forth. Once the process moves to resolve, this condition will be evaluated, and the actions defined on this level will be triggered. Request detail settings. Just to make a quick comparison between this log request settings and request detail settings. Basically, these are the settings that are applied on log request forms and on call details forms. So, for example, assuming a request has been logged, it's in progress, I open the call details. This is where the settings will apply. So for example, the call details opens, I can enforce the configuration items to be associated before the status can be changed. So assuming I have the specific process stage in progress, before I can move it to resolve, let's say, I will need to associate configuration items. The reminder notification, it's a really, really nice thing to have. For example, if I set it to 3 here, this will mean that in 3 days from now, if the stage has not been progressed, it will send an email to whoever I want to send an email to. So it's a very nice reminder if things get stuck or they are not progressed properly. The field management has the same functionality as the one explained here. This one applies, like I said, to log new calls, and this one applies to call when the call details are open. Again, I can make fields mandatory, so I can have a specific information required when the call is logged and some other information required when the call is in progress. This is where I can define this. So I can say, let's say, just something really quick, I don't know, contact. Let's say I would need to add the contact to the call. I can make this mandatory, condition 1. Now when I go on the call details form, it will specify that this specific field is mandatory and needs to be filled in. It's a way to add a bit more flexibility to your call details interface. Okay. I said in the beginning that I will come back to the extended data, but this is where you can go in a bit more in customizing your business process. An out-of-the-box template will have, let's say, a service request. This is the form I have. Obviously, you can customize it yourself if you want, by adding new fields or changing the field functionality within the form designer. But let's assume it is an out-of-the-box version. And for example, I can have a service request process, which is a new starter in the company, and I will define a specific process for it, which will follow certain stages. But besides the information that I log in the call itself, which is customer information, SLA, and so forth, which is displayed here, I might also want to log, let's say, the new starter date, who's going to be the manager, what department is going to work in, and this information I cannot store in our regular tables. So for this functionality, you can use the extended tables and the data forms, which are here. So for example, the table that I'm using can be an extended table, which is going to be like XTOC. It's a requirement to have the name in this format. New starter, it is here. So this is the table, the extended table in Supportworks that I am going to use to store my additional information. And to store this information, I also need to input it to use an interface to store it in the database. For this, I can either use the self-service. Obviously, the wizards are a great tool to input different information from customer or from your Supportworks users. that wizard can be used to store this information as well. However, if you're using the full client, then you would need a form to input this information. Let me see. Starter. Not sure if it's in. Let me have a quick look. Should be in here. So what will happen when the service request is logged? I will fill in the regular details like the customer ID, sorry, the site or so forth. But when I finish inputting this, I will be prompted with an option to actually fill in additional information. I will choose, don't think I can find, so I will choose a different one for example purposes. Let's say instead of this one, I'm going to use new. So I'm going to log a new change request. Test and test. Customer. Apologies for that. Bear me a quick minute to finish this. This is a brand new system I have installed, a brand new 762 and a complete brand new 360. I always find it best for testing purposes to have a blank system rather than a system that's already populated with data. It helps you see what's mandatory, what's not mandatory, what's missing, and what you should have defined in your system before going forward. With a pre-populated data, it's a bit more difficult to find out what's required and not. So I do apologize for that. As you've seen in when I tried to log the form, I couldn't log the form because the SLA was not associated to a customer, so I didn't have an SLA for that. Right. Going back to our change request. Start. Sorry, my typing skills. I can choose the customer. Now I have SLA, which is absolutely great. Let's log. Of course, again, going back to having a blank which didn't trigger, which is very absolutely interesting. Let's see what went stage, change recording. We have a change request. Progress, active. Data form. That's where you. All right. Okay. I see what it. So once the call is logged, I missed that part. There's a nifty button here which says data form, and this is the form that we define in the process settings. Going back to process. The error that you see there before is because I'm using a form that is not configured for the table I'm using, or the other way around. But this, for testing purposes, is just want to see how you can add that additional information that I was mentioning before in Supportworks. The very good thing about these extended tables and extended forms is that if at some point you decide to, let's say, upgrade a template to whatever 3 million.6 version, If you have a form that's customized, if you have like different fields added by yourself with different functionality, an upgrade or regular upgrade will override those changes. So you won't have them in your new upgraded template unless somebody customizes your upgrade. Having an extended table and extended form makes this upgrade really simple. All you need to do is to copy your extended form into your new template, and every single setting you define in the process will be there with you, because it's not going to be stored in the data dictionary file. It's something separate that and for where the code logic is already built in. So you're going to have your new template. The data form button is going to be in your new template. The logic or the process behind the data form is driven by whatever I set up in the business process, which is stored on the database level. So this is very useful for if you migrate or if you're using multiple templates, different templates, or you upgrading your templates, you will have everything that you previously defined, previously customized in your new environments with a simple copy from one place to another. Right. What I will try to do now is, as we had a brief overview of how business process works, perhaps let's have a quick example on how this actually works. I'm going to start and create, let's say, a service process from the beginning. I'm going to call it test. Hopefully I'm fast enough not to keep you staring at the screen. Let's say stage 1. I found it very helpful in the past if somebody actually witnessed creation from the beginning rather than somebody explaining something that's already been in there. So what I've done, I set up a name for my process, description. I went to process stages and defined my first stage. What I would need now to do is to say which is the first stage. As I said before, the process won't trigger unless it knows which one is the first stage. Going back to stages, this is, let's say, description. That's not mandatory, just nice to have. Status value. Let's say my first status is in progress, and another status is, let's say, resolved. Right. If the call is in progress, then I will define specific actions, same for resolved. Having the workflow in mind, I don't have a specific workflow, but I'm saying you should always follow the workflow that you have for your business process. I'm going to add a new stage, very meaningfully calling stage 2. Not very good typing. And apologies for that. Going back to stage 1, I'm going to say that when my process starts, I want that stage to be, the status for that stage to be in progress. So I'm going to define the new condition, and I'm going to say our lovely 1 equals 1, which is always true. So this condition will always be triggered. And I'm going to say when my business process starts, I want this workflow, which is a service request. I want, it's the test, apologies for that. So my workflow, stage 1, I want to be marked as in progress. This means that whenever my process starts, the status for this will be marked as in progress. Now, let's say that somebody actions on the call and changes the status. I can define a new condition, let's say resolved. And the condition for that, test condition for that will be if my status is resolved, then do something. Again, it's important to understand the logic. This condition will trigger when, going back to this change request, when this status here changes. So whenever I change the status here and save it, the test condition here is evaluated. So I will show a bit later on using my test process how this works, but this is very important to understand how the logic works for conditions. So I'm going to say when I change the status to resolve, let's say put it on hold for whatever amount of time. I can also set the time for how long it's going to be on hold, change the condition, and obviously any other settings I want to do. I also want to put my process, to move my process to the next stage. So I'm going to say that when the status condition changed to resolved in stage 1, then set process to stage 2, or whatever status I have here. Just a quick note, the status list here will display all status from all stages. So if you have more than one in progress and more than one result, they will show here. So that's a quick, very quick process. Let's have a quick look if we can test it to see how it actually works. So I have a service request for John. Before that, I will need, again, going back to that, sorry I was a bit quick. The perks of having an empty system, I will try to log this. I will fill in all the required fields, including SLAs, and I will notice that the service field is not filled in. So that will remind me that always a service request needs a service. I don't have any services defined, so it will require me to add a new one. Do that really quick. Let's say catalog. Let's say it's released. February. We'll add quickly add a new one. New. Yeah, it's fine. Yes. I go back here. Now I have a service category. It's called CD. It's fine. And it's don't have an operation service. So go here. Try to be very quick. This one. I have status definition. Getting back to my services, the operation status. Yeah. That could be a bug in defect in Supportworks. It's nice. We always have them. Apologies for that. Okay, let's go new. That's where I wanted to go. Available. Excellent. Yes. Now going back here. I'm going to select the other one. Select, and now I have an operational status. Quickly go back in. It's nice to have a quick overview on services as well. but I'm sure this will be covered in a different topic. Service level. Search. Sorry. This is the setting up service a bit more time consuming. I should have known that, and I do apologize for this. Now it's all set. We should be able to raise service requests against that service. So we have service requests for John. Service, very nice. Test. Now I'm going to select the process I would select the process I define if I would need to do very important things. Whenever you define a process, it's something I kind of forget to mention, you would need to make it active. It's very easy to miss this box, otherwise you won't be able to use it. So going back here, now it should be in my list. Priority course. And now my service request is in my system. As you can see, my stage 1 is set as in progress as I defined it on my own start. As you remember, I wanted to be moved to in progress if this would have not been set. So if I would have not have a condition for on start, then in my service request the status would have been empty. It's not something that it's mandatory or has an impact, but it's really nice to have an information of where the progress on the stages. So with the process settings in mind, if I set it to resolved, then this should move the request to the next stage and put it on hold, I remember, and do some changing the condition and so forth. So I save my the settings. As you can see, the status has been changed to resolved. It's moved into stage 2, and it should be on hold. As you can see here in the call diary, the call has been placed on hold automatically. We can check that really quickly in the or did I resolve it? Apologies for that. Let me quickly check. It should be list course is the last stage, of course. There is a very nice thing to have your system playing funny with you when you try to make it look nice. Obviously, it says it's moments when so this should be put into this parameter. Actually, apologies, I had something that was covering the status option, so it is set on hold, but for some reason don't think it displays properly in this interface. I do apologize for that. I misinterpreted the BPM status with the actual call status. So the call status is actually on hold as we defined it in the process settings. It's just the BPM status set as resolved. the resolve status, as I said, is taken from the previous stage. So here I wanted to show you that if you don't set a status, it will retain whatever value it was before from the previous step of the previous operation. That would be the business process manager in a very, very quick nutshell, and just wanted to show you how you can set a very simple process. Obviously, you can you can define very, very complex processes. You can jump around the stages and so forth, and you can also have your self-service integrated with the business process. By this I mean you have the option for your user or your customers to raise a request against a specific service. You can also associate, obviously, a wizard, which will guide your user to whatever information you need him to fill in, but you can also associate a business process that your internal organization will follow for that specific request from the customer. So you can define different business processes for different type of requests and have them integrated with your self-service to provide the value for the customer, which we mentioned in the beginning. Obviously, you can set up different, like I said, for different type of requests, different requests of the same type that can follow different business processes. You can also navigate between different stages and so forth. Another very nice thing that I will like to mention before that is that the business process can, let's say, you can configure your self-service to follow a specific process, and you're called to have a specific behavior when it comes to, for example, to tasks. So, for example, I can define a task for, let's say, install operating system, install software, new computer, and I can have tasks like install Excel, install Windows, I don't know, Flash and Adobe Reader and so forth. So I can create a set of standard tasks, and all these tasks I can associate to the wizard on self-service. So when the customer or the user logs the service request, he can select whatever software he needs to install on his system, and based on his selection, only those tasks that have been selected by the customer will be displayed in my service request. So it's very, very customizable, and it's very helpful for analysts. And if you set it up properly, it's very useful for your service management desk. I think I went a bit over time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Now, I also set up a forum topic on our Hornbill forums. It's in, let me navigate to where it's located. So it's in Supportworks section, Supportworks BPM, and I created a topic regarding to this webinar. Any questions, feedback, ideas, suggestions that I cannot cover today, please post here, and I will answer to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Victor. We have had a couple of questions come in, so I'll post them in there and make sure that they are responded to. So yeah, please do make sure you go onto the forum and find the answers there. I hope everyone found it useful. If you do have any obviously additional questions, feel free to email myself. You will hopefully have my contact details through the registration process, or contact your relationship manager. I will also post the recording on the Supportworks YouTube channel shortly this afternoon, and send an email out so you have that link. Finally, thank you everyone for attending today. Apologies we did run over a little bit, but I look forward to seeing you on the next Hornbill Academy, which is on the 5th of March, where we'll be looking at the steps to a successful platform upgrade. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.